You are listening to the 5 Squared Podcast, the podcast where we bring you tips for your business and your life. Our goal is to leave smarter with ideas, wisdom, tools, and even a laugh. The 5 Squared Podcast is produced weekly for your enrichment. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow me on Twitter at 5 Squared and Facebook. All the links are in the show notes. Now let's get started with your host, business consultant, executive coach, and founder of 5 Squared, Tim Fives.
Welcome back to the 5 Squared Podcast. From 5 Squared World Headquarters, York, Pennsylvania, rainy and soggy. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. We have an exciting guest coming up for you today. Today, I would like to introduce you to a friend of mine who I met at a Tony Robbins Business Mastery event, Eddie Picasso. Eddie Picasso is a second-generation immigrant, tried and tested by the best South Texas has to offer. He was raised in the Rio Grande Valley by a single mom. Eddie considers himself a lifelong business student at heart. He is now a life and business coach where he helps leaders transform their fears into relentless energy, courage, and passion. Eddie is a former student at the University of Texas Pan American, Devry University, and Arizona State University. Eddie completed a personal growth tour training in leadership from the likes of Tony Robbins, John Maxwell, Dave Ramsey, Mark and Magaly Peysha, and Grant Cardone. Eddie's commitment to contribution has led him to connect with students as a guest speaker in colleges in his community, and he is a content contributor across various platforms, and you can catch his segment on leadership, the 80s, 80 Seconds with Eddie, on his official Facebook page, at Eddie Picasso Official, and those will be in the show notes.
Have you on the podcast. I appreciate you coming on. And why don't you just give us a little bit about your background? I know you grew up with a single mom in Texas, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your experiences growing up and what gets you out of bed every morning?
Hey Tim, well thank you for having me. I'm super excited to come on board and connect with you. And pretty much, I'm a sibling of two. Actually, it's two of us. My brother and I we're raised by a single mother. Our parents were divorced early on, as soon as I was born, not too far into my birth, and pretty much they got separated. My mother brought us across the border. I was the only U.S. born child, and that's one of the reasons why our mother brought us over. That and I guess input from my dad is he wanted us to have the best opportunity that we had. The last week, and I'm going to touch base on this a little bit further down the line, but one of the reasons that he suggested bringing us to this side or to the U.S. was that no matter how bad we had it here in the U.S., it was going to be 100 times better than being raised even in the best conditions in Mexico. So that's what we're here. I was brought here when I was 6 years old. So I started my first grade here. And again, being raised by a single mother, it wasn't until recently that I realized that my dad wasn't home and my mom was always working just to put food on the table. So I never really had a fatherly figure other than my older brother, who's 5 years older than me. And up until my personal growth journey that's been happening this last year, I never really appreciated how much my mother did for us. Not only that, but how much I lacked a fatherly figure or somebody to teach me how to pretty much just be an adulting. So this personal growth journey that I've been on over the past year, it's following great mentors like Tony Robbins, John Maxwell, Dave Ramsey, Grant Cardone. I mean, you name it. I was on a personal growth journey, so I got mentored by a bunch of people. I like to say that I got mentored by them, and I finally realized, or they taught me how to actually be an adult and how all these leadership and financial principles have been around for thousands of years, and I'm just super grateful for it.
Yeah. So and I think you and I are on a similar journey, because you read off the list of the people that I've studied with, and I think that's how we got connected, was through Tony Robbins and that organization. And what are some of the big standout things during your journey that come to mind when you look back over the past year or two you've been doing this? Like, what are some of those resonating thoughts?
Oh, wow. So when I heard Tony mention last year at Business Mastery that the most successful people read 60 books a year and attend 6 live events a year, I immediately decided that 2018 was going to be the year where that's what I was going to do. That's what I needed to do to learn from these people and be successful. I was going to book my 6 events ahead of time, and definitely that the whole journey has been about that energy that you put out, the manifesting your thoughts, and really that positive attitude really attracts the people that you want to be around. Tony Robbins talks a lot about building that empowering environment of the people that are going to push you to do better. And it's definitely set a whole course in motion where the better attitude, the more positive I was, more cheerful and more energy I gave out, is the same that the universe would give back to me. I'll give you a perfect example. After a John Maxwell event, I was flying from Orlando to Las Vegas to go to another event. I was on a personal growth tour. That's what I call it. And I noticed a gentleman at the John Maxwell event that he stood out to me, but I didn't really make anything of it, right? And when I was flying my next event, I had a layover in New Orleans. And while I was going through all my material, I noticed the same gentleman at the waiting area in the lobby. And I thought, man, what are the chances? I see him at the last event. Looks like he's headed in the same direction that I am, and he's at the same layover waiting area that I am. So, there's got to be something going on here. I really learned to listen to my inner thoughts, so to speak. And
yep.
So essentially, I got up and I said, I have to talk to this guy. So I approached him and we started talking. We immediately hit it off. And he ended up not going to the next event. He just lived in that city. But we both were big Tony Robbins fans. And we connected immediately. And he happened to be crewing at UPW in San Jose in March.
Nice.
And he asked me, are you going to UPW in San Jose? And I told him, no, actually, I've already got my 6 events booked for the year. It's out of my budget. I can't make it. And he told me, well, you know what? I'm going to be crewing at the event, and I've got an extra ticket. So why don't you just go ahead and book your flight, and I'll give you my ticket.
Isn't it?
Oh my God, what?
Isn't it amazing?
I know this guy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how the universe puts these people in your path when you need them?
Oh, it's wonderful. And it's just over the past 12 months, I have so many experiences just like that, where it's like the universe just brought wonderful people together and brought them around me. And it's just been amazing. It's been an amazing journey.
Now, what has been the transformation, like before the personal development tour? What was your life like, and what are some of the other tangible things that maybe your outlook on life or how you view things? How has that changed? Well, I come from fresh out of high school. I dropped out of college. I didn't finish my education in college, and I ended up in the petrochemical refineries. It's obviously hard labor, hard work, and I started from the bottom up. I started earning $13 an hour. And over the last 13 years or so before I started this journey, I did fairly well. Coming from being a second generation immigrant with a single mother, when I started earning $13 an hour in the petrochemical refineries, I was actually living in her house.
And in the 10 years, I moved up the ranks. I picked up several different trades and eventually moved over to more of blue-collar work, which is just doing inspections and doing more paperwork than actual labor. And I went from earning those $13 an hour in hard labor to actually making about $250,000 a year, which is great. It was amazing. I had a divine intervention at some point that made me realize and made me grateful for how far I had come. Up until that point, I didn't really appreciate it. I just wasn't happy. I was making really good money. I was making a good living. I was providing for my family, but I just wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I wasn't happy. It's just like they say, money is not everything, right? Yeah, it pays the bills, but behind your happiness is a different thing. And so that environment, it's a tricky environment. There's a lot of people that make a lot of money in that industry, but the attitudes, it's not what Tony calls an empowering environment. It's difficult in that manner. And after the 2016 election, of course, Mr. Trump or President Trump won the election. I don't want to get into politics or anything, but I've been a fan of Donaldson's. When I was in business school, when I went to college, I was a business administration student. So I read his Art of the Deal early on and stuff like that. So I was a fan of his from the get-go, right? And when the elections happened, something interesting happened right afterwards. My son came home from school. I live in deep South Texas, which is a greatly Hispanic community, is a majority Hispanic community. So there's obviously a lot of undocumented people here. And one day my son came home from school crying because the teacher's aides were crying in front of him because President Trump had won the elections, and they were afraid that he was going to deport him. And so obviously, like, it peeved me, like Tony says, it peeved me because I didn't like what they were teaching my son. I didn't like that they were teaching him, okay, in the face of adversity, you're just going to give up and cry, especially in front of them, especially in front of little kids. The last year or so, I realized that a lot of the limiting beliefs that I have that have held me back for so long, I'm super grateful for what I did over the past 10 years, but I've realized that I could have done so much more. I was aiming too low. I wasn't taking my moonshot. And so I didn't want those same limiting beliefs instilled in my son. So I kind of made it a point, you know what, I'm going to show them that in the face of adversity, you're not just going to roll over and take whatever life throws at you. You got to get up and do something about it. It's the decisions that you make after that adversity that actually count, right? That's what does. Exactly. Right. So that's actually what set my personal growth journey in motion, pretty much.
Well, it's interesting when you have those inflection points in your life that really show you that for lack of a better term, that victim mentality. And I think at some point we all kind of succumb to it, whether it's the way we've been programmed and raised, or just our thoughts of being comfortable and things being taken away. And it really illuminates the ability to rise up and create that life, right? So, an interesting, powerful story for sure. I'm curious, how did you work with your son during that situation?
Absolutely. Actually, I ended up going to school and talking to them that I didn't want that happening in front of my son. So that was a major turning point. That's actually when I set my foot down and I realized that if I'm going to teach my son a lesson, then I've got to be living by my principles and my values. So I wasn't happy where I was working. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow my dreams, right? And that's I started a real estate investment company last year, and that's how I actually got to the Tony Robbins event. Even before that, I still wasn't on that personal growth journey just yet. I had put my foot down and decided that I was going to show or teach my son a lesson. I never realized that the lesson was going to be for me. Wow. That's the biggest lesson I've learned. It was all about me becoming something more and developing myself so I can further down the line contribute beyond myself.
So what was that? What was the dream? What's your dream, Eddie?
living life on my terms, pretty much. I think that's what everybody's after, right? I didn't really believe when Tony said that you've got to be crazy to become an entrepreneur, and I'm just now realizing that it's a long road ahead. It's tough, but it's all about. I'm loving what I'm doing. It's been a roller coaster. I've had some highs. I've had a lot of lows, but it's all been fun and it's all been worth it just because I've been able to do what I want to do. It's as hard as it is, as difficult as it's been, it's all been worth it.
So are you doing so I noticed in the bio you are a business coach yourself, and you have the real estate. Do you have a certain focus, a certain methodology, mentality that you try to inspire other people with?
Yes. So I started the real estate venture last year, and that's actually one of the many good things I did was not only did I invest in a company, which completely tanked, by the way. That's one of my lows. The real estate investment company didn't come out as well as I thought, and but I did invest in the company, and I did invest in myself, which was most important. And that's where I had my major breakthroughs. I attended events. I had a life coach, a business coach myself with Tony Robbins. And that's one of the big epiphanies I had, one of the big breakthroughs. I had a lot of limiting beliefs myself. I had a lot of things that I had to work out in myself, my inner conflicts before I could even succeed in business or in life. And so when I had those big breakthroughs, I realized that's when I had that divine moment I'm speaking about, that it made me grateful for how far I'd come the past 10 years, or that's 12 or 13 at that point. And I realized that it was time for me to give back, for me to contribute. Like, I had done so much and I wasn't doing anything for anybody but myself. So I realized that, you know what, maybe I could start helping other people do the same thing. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized that this, life coaching and business coaching it's amazing. Just seeing Tony transform lives just in front of you in a matter of minutes, it was super powerful to me. It made a tremendous impact.
It does. I mean, and that man has a tremendous gift. And I'm curious because it's listening to your story. There's a lot of overlap, right? I mean, different backgrounds and things, but just that search. I'm curious if you could share some of those limiting beliefs you had.
There was, I'll tell you one specific one. I'm not too sure if you were a business manager. I'm not too sure that's where we connected or not.
Yeah, but that's where we connected.
Okay, good. Yeah. Dave, he had a gym. He had a gym and he had those limiting beliefs, and he stood up. And I remember my results coach telling me, you need to be all in. You need to play full out. You need to stand up and talk to Tony, let him talk to you or whatever. And I was still inside my shell at that point. I wasn't comfortable enough doing it, but Dave stood up. And I don't want to mention his last name just for privacy reasons, but
sure.
He had a very similar story, and it pretty much hit close to home. And his big limiting belief was that he felt like he was a fraud. And when he said that, it blew me away. It's like, that's me. Like, at that point, I had so many things that I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I don't have this. I don't know enough. I didn't finish college. The usual. But
because that's funny you brought that story up because I had a very similar reaction. Like, why am I doing this? And am I good enough? And am I actually helping people? And so continue. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the big things that I felt like that. I felt like I was a big fraud, and I realized that, man, I have when Tony completely broke through to him, I had a weight lifted off my own shoulders. That's why I say that Tony's so powerful, and he says it himself that he coaches in a way that he's not just impacting that one person in front of him, he's impacting whoever is also dealing with the same issues. And that was super amazing. That's what convinced me that, well, maybe this is what I need to do. This is how I want to provide value. And through the results coaching and all that good stuff, I realized that, man, I really want to help people like this. I really want to make an impact. I want to be an agent of change, right? And so the more I dug into it, what's that?
Yeah, so yeah, continue.
So the more I dug into it, I realized that that's what I wanted to do business and life coaching. So I attended various programs. I've gone through Dave Ramsey, John Maxwell. I've gone through the strategic intervention with Mark and Magaly Peysha. And I just fell in love with the process. I fell in love with being able to change somebody and help them out just like I was helped.
So, and I run into this even in myself. I don't know if you have, but I know some of my clients have as well. You have that, we'll call it the I'm a fraud mentality. And, once you get over that, how do you maintain it? Right? Have you had any struggles with, kind of relapsing and coming back out of it? Or have you been, once you made that transition, you're good?
Oh, no, the struggle is real, right? No, that's a constant. So Tony has different levels of mastery that he talks about, but I'm not going to go deep into it. But pretty much it's a daily thing where you condition yourself, you train yourself to do it every day, because you are your own worst enemy, and it's he says it himself. You get out of your head or you die, right? And it's those constant inner battles. It's on a daily basis, a daily thing. It's conditioning that and breaking that cycle, breaking those patterns. So my big go-to, and a big believer in his 7 steps to creating lasting change, interrupting patterns constantly. So every day, every morning, I get up, my first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do my priming. I'll do my incantations, which are now to a few of them, combining some methods from Think and Grow Rich and Tony and Vision Board. So I do all that. I do the meditation, do my daily workouts, and the priming, of course, I do twice a day, as soon as I get up, and then right after lunch, because that afternoon lunch really brings a lot of people down, starts weighing down on you, start getting a little tired, a little sleepy, and that's when you get into that priming mode again and be outstanding, right?
Absolutely, I love it. And I have a very similar thing that I do in the morning, that routine. And you brought up Think and Grow Rich, which is one of my all-time favorite books. I have another question for you. You're big into fitness, so, and I know I follow you on Facebook, and I see the progress you've made. Has this journey helped that? Have those two things, helped? Have you built up? I can't even talk right now. But have you, the personal journey and the fitness, are those intertwined? Or tell me a little bit about that journey.
Oh man, I'm glad you asked that. That's absolutely right. That's the product of my personal development, and interestingly enough, it all came together right at the 1-year anniversary of Business Mastery this year. And the real estate business that I had, it didn't work out as I wanted to, and I ended up turning it into a job, and I wasn't happy with what I was doing. It was a job. It was a 14 to 16-hour job, which I now realize that's the life of somebody who's trying to start a business. But at that time, it weighed heavy on me. So I started soul searching and looking at what was it that I enjoy doing. What is it that I always fell back on? What is it that every time I needed to get away from all this, what is it that I always fell back to? And ultimately, it was working on my Jeep. I'm a very hands-on person. It goes back to my labor work. And fitness. I've always been big into fitness. I fell off the wagon a couple of times, where everybody does. It's a normal thing.
Yeah, we all do.
What's that?
Yeah, we all fall off that wagon.
Exactly. Everybody thinks that, you fall off the wagon, that's it. You have to go back and binge eat and binge Netflix and all that stuff. But it's normal. People fall off the wagon all the time, and it's just learning to appreciate that it's a normal thing. It's a matter of just getting back up and getting back on that horse. And so since it's been big for me in the past my whole adult life, pretty much. Like, maybe I can combine these two, Jeep and fitness. And then so I saw Instagram, and some people were working out on their Jeeps. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like, I want to do this. Yeah, so that's how I named it Jeep Fit after that. So Jeeps and fitness. So yeah, that's absolutely is a product of all my personal development, me wanting to live life on my terms and really doing, love what I love doing, pretty much.
That's fantastic. Now, as an off-road guy myself, I have a Taco, so not a Jeep guy, but I'm right there with you. I get a big outdoors fan myself, and I just got a newer an 18 off-road Tacoma, so love that thing. Amazing. So yeah, it's funny when I was been following you, and I'm like, man, this is a kindred spirit right here. I love this guy.
Thank you. Actually, I was a Toyota man before I turned over to Jeeps. I actually turned in a Toyota Tundra, a brand new Tundra, because I didn't want to get rid of my wife's Jeep, and it was a soccer mom Jeep before I got it, and then I turned it into what it is now.
All right, give me the specs on it. We'll have tires, lift.
Okay, it's a 2015 JKU Unlimited Sahara. Nice. So it's a total soccer mom Jeep. It's got the leather interior, all the upgrades, right? It's fresh off the showroom, as a matter of fact. But of course, it was a soccer mom Jeep, so I had to put a 3-inch TerraFlex lift on it with a long arm kit, 4-link system on 20-inch Mickey Thompson wheels on 37-inch tires. Mickey Thompson's also. Nice. My favorite parts about it is the axles. I completely changed out the axles. It's built better. My intention was to build it from the ground up and build it better than a Rubicon. So I upgraded the axles to Dana 44 or D44 axles with E-lockers, 513 gears to haul those heavy 37-inch tires.
Yeah, I love it.
And to help it a little bit more, so when I did that, it was sluggish on the highway. But man, I need a little bit more power, but I don't want to do a whole engine swap, so I put a RIP supercharger in it. And funny story about that RIP supercharger. So I'm a hands-on guy, right? Usually, if I don't have specialty tools, I'll take it to a local shop that I'm really familiar with. But that's RIP supercharger I put on it. I installed it in the parking lot of a Super 8 motel over a weekend, or I had one day off at work, and I installed it in the parking lot.
Fantastic. Now, are you a big off-road guy then? I assume you got this thing set up. You got some favorite trails. What do you do with it?
Well, I haven't used it as much as I'd like to, but I have gone to a few trails here in Texas, a couple of privately owned ranches, Side Creek Ranch up in Houston, and I do a lot of beach stuff with it. Nice.
So, as we come to wrap up, leaving our listeners, a fantastic story. What are the kind of the key things that you would leave somebody listening today with from your journey, and about the thoughts and taking control of your destiny? Like, how would you encapsulate that?
So that message started from Think and Grow Rich, and it's evolved in me. You are definitely the master of your destiny. You completely direct and control your own environment. So Tony talks a lot about vocabulary, transformational vocabulary, and manifesting your thoughts, pretty much. So the energy that you put out, the thoughts that you give, the vibes, all those energies and all those auras, they're a lot of people don't believe in it, but I've seen it myself, and it's super real. Like, I'd never realized how powerful it was, feeling other people's energy, seeing other people's aura, and just by being aware, or self-awareness of that power, of that energy that you put out, that automatically attracts the people and the environment equal to the energy that you put out, pretty much. So you do manifest your own destiny. Your thoughts attract your future, your destiny, and the people that you need to surround yourself with to get you to that next level. And that's been my big epiphany, that every time I have a big breakthrough is because of that energy I put out. It's all that, the world, the ether, the universe, whatever you want to call it, it's like karma brings it back to me with amazing people. I've got amazing stories with so many amazing people from all around the world just because of it, and it's all because of your thoughts, of you manifesting your destiny, your goals, and your desires.
Well, Eddie, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today, and I'd love to have you back to talk about some more of those stories, because that is, we we have such similar experiences with the people we've met, and just the good things that have been falling into our lives, and maybe we can trade some more off-roading stories and whatnot between our extracurricular activities. So I really appreciate you coming on, and look forward to having you back as a guest. And for those that are listening, all of Eddie's contact information, his Facebook pages, and things will be in the show notes. So Eddie, I'll leave the closing thoughts to yourself. Anything for the listeners?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Tim, for having me. It's been a pleasure. I'm super grateful for you inviting me over to your podcast. And yes, like I said before, you are the master of your destiny. So take your moonshot, 10x your goals, do whatever you have to do to reach your dreams and live life on your terms.
Thank you so much for listening to the show with your host, Tim Fives. We hope you will pass along our web address, fivesquared.com, to your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at 5Squared or follow us on Facebook. This has been a 5 Squared production. Join us next time for another edition of the 5 Squared Podcast.